you mentioned it. JJ McCarthy in Minnesota is getting a lot of steam. And
Yep.
I think that's a really, really nice little linkage in that offense with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. This might be the most desirable quarterback landing spot of any team in this year's draft. You know what I mean? So super excited at the thought of them getting that new young quarterback to keep the mojo going after Kirk Cousins has left. I think it's safe to say that you like Minnesota as a fit. Another team that has surfaced for him has been Denver. But I'm not sure if I like that fit quite as much, just because I think Sean Payton is liable to ruin a young quarterback potentially. But looking at JJ McCarthy in Minnesota, because I think there's that real possibility. Like I said, they could trade up to get him to make sure nobody else does. If we see that, how confident are you, Wiz, that JJ McCarthy, with that lack of production that we saw in college, we did see a lot of efficiency, but he never had that blow up production that held up multiple weapons like this. How confident are you that he can keep all of those guys happy in Minnesota?
Yeah, look, man, I think the production thing is a really good point, right? Like we can like him, he can have intangibles, he can have a big arm, like he can interview well, and by all accounts, like, you know, great young kid who's got a high IQ, but like with that lack of production that he had in college, like there just has to be at least somewhat of a learning curve, right? Like, so I think you're gonna have to kind of take your lumps from Jefferson and Addison standpoint, and you know, obviously it looks like Hawkinson's probably going to be on the pup to start the season because he had to delay the surgery. But when I think about, like, you know, what are some of the things like he does well, right? Like big arm. Okay. He's actually like pretty athletic, which I was not really kind of ready for. He had the 5th best 3-cone time at the combine, which was pretty surprising. And, you know, there's been reports where at Michigan, he kind of ran around a 4.5, right? Like, so it's not like he's, you know, Lamar Jackson out there, but he's got enough to be able to move the pocket if need be, extend plays where he has to, right? So really the reason why I kind of like this spot for JJ is because I'm a pretty big Kevin O'Connell guy. I think, you know, being, you know, obviously he sat behind Brady and really wasn't a factor in the league, but, you know, being a quarterback, he kind of speaks that language a little bit more. And it just does seem like he's able to get quite a bit out of his quarterbacks. I think, you know, when you look at the obviously lack of playoff success with Cousins, but like, man, he put up some numbers while he was there, right? And by the time, you know, right up until Cousins got hurt, man, like he was balling, right? And that was kind of the best they'd ever looked. And then you just kind of think about, like, look, he got the absolute most he could have for Josh Dobbs for those couple games. And then, you know, you look at Nick Mullins coming in and throwing for almost 400 yards in 2 of those 4 starts, right? So like we've seen him kind of make do with, you know, maybe not the best situation. And I think when you've got guys on the outside, like, you know, Jefferson and Addison, I think this is probably a situation, if the way I look at it, Trav, is like learning curve to start. Maybe he starts to build a rapport with Addison and Jefferson kind of in those first few weeks, kind of starts to find his footing. Hawkinson comes back, he's got another weapon, and then maybe he kind of closes that second half of his rookie season on a stronger note. How do you feel about like the JJ McCarthy landing spot in Minnesota? Are you as kind of optimistic, or do you have reservations? Or
I'm like cautiously optimistic. Yeah, I can see the path for it not to succeed, right? Like I could see a quarterback who wasn't given the chance to be the general of his offense fully necessarily, maybe succumbing under the pressure of the NFL, being that he went to a landing spot that is just pristine. Those expectations are going to be really high, right? And he's going to be expected to produce more than he's ever produced, like especially in the college level. I can't speak to his high school production or anything like that. But I love everything you laid out about Kevin O'Connell. Love those former quarterbacks coming in and mentoring these young quarterbacks. Like a guy like Kellen Moore is a former quarterback who I think is a great offensive coordinator, excited about as an Eagles fan. And I think Kevin O'Connell is just like obviously tiers above Kellen Moore, and he's running a great offense there. So I think like he's going to need to be super efficient for sure. But he's going to have a lot of passing volume to do that within, because I think the thing is if he's not efficient, he's not delivering the ball and not keeping this offensive up, I think he could have some squeaky wheels, right? And I think that could be something that doesn't help a young quarterback's confidence. But we know Jordan Addison's going to be getting down the field. JJ McCarthy had the 2nd best deep completion percentage in this class last year. TJ Hawkinson, when he's back, he's going to work that short area, middle of the field. He is good after the catch, good in the red zone. We like that. Take a look at this, Wiz. I'm looking at Kevin O'Connell's offenses too. And just looking at
Yeah.
that pass rate stuff, because I was digging in, I just want to see like what they're going to offer, right? So Kevin O'Connell's Minnesota Vikings just overall had the oh, of course my sorting's all screwed. They had the third highest pass rate at 66.4%. Listen to this though. Get him inside the inside the 10-yard line. 69.7%, almost 70% pass rate. We do have to bring in the context that Alexander Madison and Ty Chandler were not doing them any favors last year from the running back perspective. So maybe they did have to throw the ball more. But this is an extremely high amount. They were second in the league to only the Jets inside the 10. And then they were number one inside the 20 with 68.7%. So when it counts, Kevin O'Connell is going to throw the ball, and I think he is going to allow for JJ McCarthy to do some of that. So I love that, and I think this is a really good fit. Another place that insulates him, like Drake May, but allows him the weapons and the high-powered offense to actually blossom into that franchise quarterback that we haven't seen him be, right? And so super interesting, because we've seen Drake May produce, and he might go to the place that doesn't have the weapons, but we think he's a good fit there. And then JJ McCarthy, we haven't seen produce. He's going to go to the weapons. We also obviously love him there, and we're excited about him. Yeah. So it's really interesting, because a lot of this stuff might be like red flags in previous quarterback prospect scouting when there's not a bunch of big production from that guy. But I think what we're seeing is the depth of analysis in football now is making us like some of these guys, because we can target that low volume efficiency that guys had, and we can think about projecting that forward into the NFL a little bit more. And I like that, right? I think that's really fun for us to dig deeper. I think that's something that people are going to get when they tune into the Unraveled show, is we like to go a little bit deeper into the weeds on some of these guys and give you some of that full picture to tell you what's happening, because we don't want to steer you wrong.
Yeah, no, and Trav, kind of jumping off that same point, right? Is I think you're some of that, right? Looking at some of the efficiency and being more willing to take chances on guys like that is, I think you're kind of starting to see like that changing of the guard in the NFL, right? Like it's been such a retread league for so long. But then you look around the league these last few years and who's had success, right? It's these younger guys that have either been quarterbacks in the league or coming off the McVay or Shanahan tree, right? And those guys are much more willing to kind of try things, tailor their schemes to their players, right? And that's one thing that Shanahan's spoken about. And, you know, you've seen kind of these young coaches be a lot better at shifting towards what they have and making the best out of what they have, instead of trying to fit a square peg in a round hole situation, right? Yeah. So, I think, look, to kind of close it up on JJ, man, I think he's a kind of a higher floor quarterback than some of the rest of the guys, right? I think the floor on Jaden Daniels is a lot lower than somebody on JJ McCarthy. Right. Like, so
or out of the league in 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, look, if things click, man, and he's there and they end up keeping Jefferson long term, which you got to think that if they take JJ, then they probably make that deal and get it done. Being attached to KOC and having nice weapons there's a lot to like there long term as well. Not to mention bringing on a free agent in Aaron Jones, who's been proven to be a nice pass catcher during his time in Green Bay, right? So
totally, really, like I think Aaron Jones is one of the most underrated running backs we've ever seen as a pass catcher, as a red zone runner, like as all of that. So, and I think he's going to bring a lot of leadership to the same backfield as that rookie quarterback too. So really, really well put, Wiz.